So let's now just set our lerp value back to 0.5, and we don't have a color yet. So let's drag this lerp up here into our base color. We're going to start to see this become a little bright. So now we see though that there's this yellow and sort of muted yellow-green in here, and we see a little bit of translucency. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some edge glow, and we're going to do some kind of funky math here, but we're going to use a few different parameters, and we're going to pull off of our lerp right here, and we're going to type ddx, we're going to type ddy, we are going to drag off here and say power. We're going to control C, control C, control V. We are going to add these two together. And we are going to take the square root, and then we're going to clamp this. I'm not going to get into what this math is doing right now. You're just going to have to trust me. And what we're then going to do is we're going to multiply this by a color. So we're going to make a color similar to this. I'll control C, control V. I'm going to call this color C. And this is going to be just a very bright yellow color like that. Awesome. I'm going to control C, control V this multiply again. I'm going to drag this into here. I'm going to drag this into here. I'm going to drag off here. I'm going to type lerp, and I'll explain all of this in just a second. I'm going to make value be 5, and I'm going to grab our lerp value down here, control C, control V. I'm going to drag this into our alpha. If I right click here, I can start to see the kind of edge outline of a lot of this smoke. And what this is going to do is allow me to add a little bit of glow to the edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this into my emissive color. And what we can see is when we zoom in, the edges of this is going to be emissive. So the interior, this darker color, is dark and non-emissive, and then the edges are white with this bright color. So if I change this to blue, I'll start to see, where the edges of this are, and we'll see that it's masked to the edges. So I'm gonna make this yellow. This math right here, just consider this a little bit of voodoo right now. And let's just add some comments. This right here is our opacity. This right here is our edge glow. And this up here is our color. And I'm adding these comments by just selecting and pressing C. So you can just press C on your keyboard to add a comment. And awesome, so we have our material. So what we're gonna do is in our blueprint later, we're going to control this lerp value. We're gonna create a dynamic material instance, and we're going to pass in a lerp value, which is going to dynamically affect the contrast here, the lerp for the opacity here. So basically allow us to shift from A to B to C as this value goes from 0 to 1. So it's basically working its way from A to B to C. A is 0, C is 1. And then elsewhere over here, this edge glow, basically in the beginning, it's going to be the least emissive. When it's A, it's 0. And then once it hits 1, it's B, the B value. And so it's going to be 5. So basically, lerp, we're going to use a 0 to 1 value. It's going to push all these different things from an A to B value. Awesome. So let's save this and let's jump over to our particle material. All right, so our particle material is going to be very simple compared to this. I'm going to right click. I'm going to create a new material. I'll call this M_smoke particle. Let's double click to open this up. While I have this selected, I'm going to change some of my material parameters over here. I'm going to change this to translucent. and I'll keep this as the default lit. So what I need to do is right click, and I'm going to type particle color. This is going to allow me to push in particle RGB values and alphas from the particle system. So I'm going to drag off here, and I will say multiply. I'm going to pull off, actually I'll just do it right here. I'm going to type a value of 0.025. We can use, if we want, a scalar parameter to control the brightness of this. For now, I'm just going to use that. I'm going to drag this into the base color. So I will add some texture samples for you guys to use. You can find them on my Patreon to download for free. Right now I'm going to download one that's here, but you'll want to download one of these or use one from your own library. So I'm going to drag this in, and I know that this already has an alpha. You're going to want to use something that either has a black and white value or an alpha. In this instance, I'm going to use an alpha, so I'm going to use the alpha channel. So I'm going to pull off of this alpha channel, and I'm going to type multiply. I'm actually going to put this in the B value, so I'm going to press Control on my keyboard and left mouse click to drag this into a new slot. So I can do that by Control left mouse. And I'm going to drag the alpha out and put this into the A for the particle. So particle alpha, texture sample alpha. I'm going to drag the output of the multiply into the opacity. So over here in my preview window, if I select this third box, which is a plane, you can start to see this particle sprite. So we can see a little bit of transparency. We know that it's actually a plane, but because of the alpha map, it is showing as a little bit transparent. So 0.025, I'll keep it for now. So this is our particle sprite, pretty simple. And now what we're going to do is use this as the base of our smoke particle system. So now let's create that system. All right, so in our content drawer, let's right click, and we're going to create a new Niagara system. I'm going to use a base particle for this. So I'm going to type hanging particulates. So I type hang to get hanging particulates. This has some of the base properties that we're just going to use instead of starting from scratch. I'm going to type ns underscore smoke door base. I'll double click to open it up. And we're going to delete the scale color property. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete aerodynamic drag, and I'm going to delete wind force. We don't really need those for what we're doing. So I'm going to compile, I'll save just because, and let's start by clicking on Sprite Renderer at the bottom. We're going to grab our smoke particle that we've created. So I'm going to browse to this, have it selected in my content drawer. And then over in my Niagara system, what I'm going to do now is use the left arrow to just pop that into place so that we're seeing that represented in our viewport. So now we see our smoky little wisps. So let's change this to look more like what we want it to. In the end, it's going to look like this. It's going to be a rectangular box that produces a dark smoke at the base, and we'll work towards what we're seeing here. So let's start by going up to the top. We're gonna, where it says properties, we don't need this to be a CPU sim particle. We're gonna leverage the GPU for this. So we're gonna click GPU convert, compute sim. It's gonna yell at you. And what it's yelling at you about is it wants you to make this, instead of dynamic, it wants you to make it fixed. So that is just fine. Let's change this to a much larger bounds. We're gonna type negative 5,000. And I'm going to Control C this, and I'm going to Control V this in the X, Y, and Z. And then I'm going to make this positive 5,000. So this is going to be big. We're going to be able to see this from a good distance away, which is great. So I'm going to save that. And now what we're going to do is we will change some aspects of our particle first. So we're going to change this. So where it says initialize particle, we're going to change the base values. So we're going to change the lifetime min and max from 5 and 8 to 5 and 10. So that's right here. And again, we're under initialized particle. Then what we're going to do is we're going to change the sprite size. So right now in our viewport, we see these are very tiny. We can barely see them. We're going to change the size min to 25 and the size max to 125. So immediately we start to see these smoky plumes popping up in our preview window. I'm going to change this up here to lit for some reason I'm on default as unlit, so just make sure it's lit mode. So it's a more representative version of your environment. So now let us change the spawn rate. So by default, 50. That's great. If you want to push it, you can, but right now let's leave it at 50. So we're not going to change that. Let's change now the shape location. So we're going to go to shape location here under particle spawn. I'm going to click this. And then this is where it's going to control the bounding box volume that the shape is spawning in. So here we can see it spawning in a box/plane. We're going to keep that. We're going to change the size. Right now it's in a 400 unit box, which means it's 4 meters. We don't need that. We're going to change it to something that is going to match more with our door. So we're going to make this 30 by 100 by 15. And so I believe this is the extent. So I think it's going to be 200 wide. And then that is so good. So now we can see this will fit nicely at the base of our door. And let's change some additional qualities. So what we're going to do is the smoke is going to sort of pour outward. So as you're approaching it, you see the smoke kind of coming towards you. And what we're going to do to accommodate that is we're going to add a velocity on spawn. So I'm going to click the plus sign here next to particle spawn. I'm going to click this. I'm going to type add velocity. So I'm going to click here. You see it pops up right here. By default, it is going up in the Z. If maybe you want that, you could do that, but we're going to just not do that. And what we're going to do is we are going to change this. So right now we see in the 50 in the Z. We don't want that. We're going to right click here, or we're going to click on this downward caret. We're going to type multiply vector. And we're going to drop down one more time, and we're going to say random range vector for A, and then we're going to do the same for B. We're going to click the caret right over here. We're going to say random range vector. This basically allows us to plug in different values with the caret, so we can do all these different operations. What we're going to do is we're going to make it mostly forward, but we're going to range how fast it goes forward. Then we're also going to give it a little bit of, randomization in the, way it's angling. So it doesn't just go straight forward. It can have a little variation. So I'm going to type 5 in the X. And let me actually just double check my other one. Okay, 5, 15. Excellent. Okay. So we're going to do 5 to 15. And then what we want to do is we also want to make sure that this has a 1 value here and a 0 value for the Z. So we'll see why in just a second. And then we're going to type 1 here. So 5, 15, 1, 1, 0, 0. In this one, it's going to be 1. And then we're going to make this -10 and then +10. And basically what this is going to allow us to do is see, now we can see they're basically, some of them are going at random angles in the Y. So basically they're all going away. We can imagine our door at the very top here. Some of them are going left, some of them are going right with a little bit of variation. And that's because we have a random speed forward. And we've also multiplied that by a random speed in the Y vector. So some basic vector math. We want to make sure that this is 1 instead of 0, because otherwise -10 times 0 is still 0. And so it's just going to go straight. So that is good. And let's keep on keeping on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a rotation value to this. So on the particle update, we're going to press the plus sign and we're going to type Sprite rotation rate. And we're going to do a random range vector here. So I'm going to click this caret in the top right. So across from rotation rate, click the caret, type random range float. And this is basically going to be a random float between two values. So I'm going to type -15 and 15. And then we'll start to see a little bit of spin. So now we can see, you know, if we wanted to be really dramatic, we're not going to do this, but just so we can see it, we'll start to see these spin a little more aggressively. Even that isn't super aggressive. So this is super aggressive. We don't really want to spin it that much, but just so we can see it for illustration. So I'm going to type, let's do negative 25, 25. Get some good spin in there. And let's change the sprite size scaling. So they kind of, you know, by default, pop it in, scale it up, and then as the lifetime goes on, shrinks a little bit, and then pops out at the end. Let's move this in a little bit. So I'm going to drag this across by left mouse clicking and holding shift as I drop it to kind of click it on these grid snaps. So something like this is good. It's going to fade in a little more naturally over time and then fade out. So excellent. And that should be good for our particle system for now. Maybe we'll make some more tweaks later, but for now, we're good.